All right, so now that we have the diminishing marginal product set up, um, it's time to define a bunch of different costs. Um, so we're going to see fixed costs, we're going to see variable costs, we're going to see total cost, and marginal cost. So the four basic kinds of costs, and they're going to have averages. So just be aware of that. So you're going to see different interplays between different kinds of costs. Okay, so first up we have fixed costs, and these are basically the costs that don't depend on the quantity of output produced. And like the shorthand way of thinking about it is, when you start a business, you have to pay, let's say, legal fees to start it, right? And you have to buy a building or, rent a building for a particular time period for, let's say, a year or something, like sign a lease. You have to buy a deep fryer if let's say you're starting an accounting firm. You have to hire, core staff, right, who are on salary for, maybe a year, maybe more. Um, so you have different costs that you incur, uh, regardless of how much of the quantity you produce. Okay, so buying a stove to cook pizza would be a fixed cost. Doesn't matter how many pizzas you make, you need that stove in order to as like a precondition to do your business. Okay. Opposite to fixed costs are variable costs, and these are costs that do depend on the quantity of output produced. Okay, so in the example of like starting an accounting firm, let's say seasonal staff could be a variable cost as you want to produce more, I don't know, tax returns or whatever accountants do. I know I'm being facetious here, but if you want to produce more tax returns, you can hire seasonal accounting staff, um, which who can help ramp up the quantity for a particular time period. Um, if you're looking at the pizza example, okay, you want to make more pizzas, well, you're going to need dough, right? You're going to need cheese. You're going to need pepperoni, right? Those are your variable costs. You're going to need to pay a worker to work an extra hour. That's a variable cost. Okay. So fixed cost is basically anything that's not quantity dependent. It's like the cost that you incur kind of upfront generally, or that you pay for a particular period of time. Whereas variable costs are variable in the sense that if you want to increase your quantity, you increase your variable costs. Okay. So you have the ability to shift around your production to avoid incurring additional variable costs, or um, you can incur additional variable costs in order to increase your production. So basically, variable costs are um, directly related to the quantity of output you want to have, whereas fixed costs are not. Fixed costs are set for in general. We say that variable costs can be tweaked in the short run, whereas fixed costs cannot. Fixed costs are a long run trend. Okay, and you'll see that as we kind of move towards the end of these slides. Okay, and remember when I did that TC of Q earlier? I don't know why I need to write it down, but I did that function TC of Q back in the day, which was here. Well, I deliberately left it vague so that I could flesh it out later. Okay, so TCQ can be broken down into its component pieces. Okay, so your total cost is a function of your variable cost and your fixed costs. Okay, so fixed costs don't have that Q. Why don't they have that Q? Fixed costs do not depend on quantity. Okay, variable costs do depend on quantity. So variable costs are a function of Q, fixed costs are not. Okay, so TC of Q is really just your variable cost of Q plus your fixed costs, which are a number. Okay. So let's say you pay $30,000 in salary, $1,000 on the lease for that particular month, and you pay $100 per tax return or whatever. You pay $100 per hour of tax return material, right? Your fixed cost would be the whatever 30,000 plus 1,000, and then your variable cost would be 100 times the number of tax returns you need to file or hours that you spend filing a tax return. Okay. All right, sorry, I'm going to erase this. I always do that to you guys. I throw up numbers and then I forget the numbers that I threw up because it's hard to draw on these lecture slides because I am really bad at working the mouse as a pen. So if I give inconsistent numbers, please don't hold it against me. It's hard to keep everything in my head. All right, so So we're on to marginal cost. So basically, what is marginal? What does it mean to be marginal? You've seen this now 50 times, I'm sure. Marginal is the next additional unit. So marginal cost is the cost to produce one more unit. Okay. Your marginal product is the product of one more unit of input. Marginal cost is the cost of producing one more unit of output. Okay. So if we're defining marginal cost mathematically, it's going to be the change, that's this delta. So the change in total cost divided by your quantity, your change in quantity, excuse me. Okay. So basically, let's say, or you know what, we'll do it in the next slide. I have an example in the next slide. But let's say you increase your variable cost. You increase your quantity by 1, so your variable cost goes up by some number. So TC, your marginal cost will be TC2 minus TC1 divided by 2 minus 1. Okay. Alternatively, you could write your VC of 2 minus your VC of 1 minus your total costs, or minus 2 divided by 2 over 1. See, now I feel like I should draw it, but that's fine. I know I said it correctly, but we'll move on. I'll show you if you're confused on the actual math. The next slide would do a ton of that. Okay, so we can break it down in a second. I'll have you break it down in just 1 second. Let me some sugar, I'm your neighbor. I don't know what the next line is. Sorry guys, it's late. I guess I'm breaking out now. Outcast here. So anyway, marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by your change in quantity. This is differentiated from your average total cost, okay, which is your total cost divided by your quantity. So this is change in, this is not, okay. And they have different, like the distinction matters, okay. Marginal cost versus average total cost. My opinion, marginal cost is a more important variable to keep in mind because it matters for a lot of different markets. Average total cost it's still important. It matters a lot in perfect competition. Less so in other market structures. A little bit of monopoly, whatever. But marginal cost is something that if you take upper level economics classes, it's like everywhere. So know the distinction. Okay. So you can break down average total cost into its components, just like you could with marginal cost, or just like you can with marginal cost. I didn't actually show it. But if you want to throw in TCQ, if you want to throw in the components of TCQ into the numerator, you can do that. So FC plus VCQ divided by Q. Okay. And then if you want to divide, so you can decompose the numerator, right? So you can always use the distributive property to divide FC by Q and VCQ by Q. Okay, but not the other way around. If it was an addition in the denominator, you can't do that. Just a side note. So FC divided by Q plus VC divided by Q is also another way of writing your average total cost. And if we're taking FC and you're dividing it by a quantity, that's your average fixed cost, right? And if you take VC and you divide it by quantity, that's your average variable cost. And the reason I'm confident in saying that without formally defining it is you're just dividing by quantity. So if your fixed cost is $100 and you produce $10 or 10 units, your average fixed cost is going to be 10. Okay. If your variable cost is $200 and you produce 10 units, your average variable cost is going to be 20. Okay. It's just what an average is, right? So another way of stating your average total cost is equal to your average fixed cost plus your average variable cost. Okay. So to recap, you have fixed costs which don't depend on quantity. You have variable costs which do depend on quantity. You have total costs which depend on quantity because total cost is the sum of your variable costs which depend on quantity and your fixed costs which do not. You have marginal costs, which is the change in total cost divided by your change in quantity. Okay, and you can decompose the change in total cost to be, VC2. Let's say quantity one. If quantity goes from 1 to 2, you can, or let's say quantity goes from 1 to 3. VC3 minus VC1 divided by 3 minus 1, because the fixed cost it's not dependent on quantity. Okay. And then finally, you have your average total cost, which is equal to your average fixed cost plus your average variable cost. Okay. So you're making a CGI horror film. Okay. It's about a gelatinous blob that scares children because it's me, and that's the example I chose to give when I created this. And I love it. All right. So you're making a horror film, and for some reason it's about a gelatinous blob. All right. In order to make the gelatinous blob, you need to pay a CGI team. Okay. That CGI team is variable cost. So you're paying them proportional to the work that they do. So basically, you're paying your CGI team per hour. Okay, they're a variable cost. You also pay Kurt Russell, who's the star in your movie, a flat fee for starring in the movie. Okay, so he makes $500 or whatever, $500 million. I don't know the denomination. Doesn't matter. There's a toy example. Don't worry about the actual numbers, like whether they're realistic or not. They're not. I just made them up. Okay. So you have your fixed cost, you have your variable cost. Okay. And do want to note, my head is in the way, but it says note over here, because there's diminishing marginal products, $100 of CGI gets less and less minutes. Okay, so notice on this column, it's increasing. The variable cost is increasing by 100, but it's only getting you 8 minutes here. So it goes from 10 minutes here to 8 minutes to 6 minutes to 4 minutes. So you're getting decreasing marginal product per unit of input. The unit of input will be your CGI minutes. Okay. So the input into the CGI team. Okay. All right. I kind of went real quick there, and I forgot which variable I'm asking first. So if I were to ask you what the total cost was, you would just add up, right? Total cost is equal to your variable cost plus your fixed cost. So the total cost, if I were to add them up, would be 500 plus 0. Come on, mouse. 500 plus 0, 500 plus 100, 502, 503, 504. So 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. Okay. If I asked you for average average fixed cost, What would that be? So you take the fixed cost and you divide it by the quantity, right? Okay, so you can't do this one because it's 0. You can't divide by 0. But from here, you have 500 divided by 10, so that's 50. 500 divided by 18, which is, sorry, I don't have this off the top of my head. 500 divided by 18 should be 27.78. 500 divided by 24, bring the calculator over. So, oh, hey, I don't want that. Go away. So I want 500 divided by 24, which is 20.83. And then my head's in the way, but it's 28. 500 should be 17.7. All right. Come on, man. Did I do that right? Oh, 17.86. I'm sorry. I don't know where I saw 7. Okay. Next up, average variable cost. So that'll be 100 divided by 10, 200 divided by 18, 300 divided by 24, and 400 divided by 28. So you're going to get, 100 divided by 10 is 10, 200 divided by 18, I guess, is 11.11, 12.5, and 14.29. And if I asked you for the average total cost, you could just add these two up. So 60, 38.89, 33.33, etc. And then if I asked you for, I guess the marginal cost is the only one that's left. So I would take the total cost, I would take the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. Okay, so 600 minus 500 divided by 10 minus 0. So you have 100 divided by 10, so that should be 10. And then 100 divided by 8, that should be 12.5. And then 100 divided by 6, so that should be 16.66. Then 100 divided by 4, so that should be 25. Boom. Okay. So just here's the simple equations for the different variables, and here are their rates. So that's basically the different types of costs that you incur. And you'll see why they're important, particularly if you've read ahead in the textbook, which I think you might have been assigned the assignment already for this particular chapter. No, I'm sorry, that's textbook assignment 9. So you haven't seen it yet, but when you see the last textbook assignment, you'll see marginal cost, you'll see average total cost, average variable cost a lot. And there'll be, usually graphs with all 3 lines written next to each other, and the different lines matter. So, keep that in mind, be able to calculate these. So what did I want to do? There's one other thing I wanted to say. So because there's diminishing marginal product, notice the marginal cost will be increasing. Typically, marginal costs will kind of hook like this. Okay. I'm going to stop there.